There's something special about each of us inside of our souls that yearns to manifest the archetype of the hero. And what's very cool and what's very significant on this semen retention journey, and by the way, welcome to another Semen Retention Sunday episode on this channel. What's so significant is that we, on semen retention, have the opportunity to become our own hero and to actualize our own ideals and to play out our own ideals and principles and to not abandon them or abolish them in the depths of our souls. And there's something that has always captured my attention about Spider-Man, for example. Superheroes of all kind, but I've always been drawn to Spider-Man. And Spider-Man 2 I'm thinking about right now, where Aunt May is talking about what's it like for a hero to be needed, because there's a kid that is helping Aunt May, Spider-Man's aunt, pack things up and move out and do some things, but Spider-Man has decided to quit for a minute, and he's trying to do other things and wanting to do other things, and he doesn't know if he has the strength to continue doing what he's supposed to be doing, or if he's even supposed to be doing what he is as Spider-Man, if he's supposed to be helping the people. But something that Aunt May says is something along the lines of, a hero gives us strength and courage and has this more self-sacrificing nature about them. And sometimes we have to even be willing to give up our own dreams to just hold on a little bit longer and stay in the fight a little bit longer. And what's so powerful about semen retention is it gives you this mindset naturally as a man. You have the ability to create, you have the ability to destroy, but now you're capable of more of an actualization process within this. And when you are able to set certain goals and you're able to meet those goals in the time frame that you set those goals, there's not only a release of positive emotion that emanates from your psychophysiological connections, but it's also something that radiates in your soul and rings true to your soul, that you realize that, wow, you can start to do this. You can actually not watch porn. You can actually not play with yourself. You can actually live a life where you don't have to live in fear of getting prostate cancer because you're not playing with yourself. As crazy as that sounds, that's what a lot of people have told me that they fear practicing this practice, is that they're not going to be able to, or they are going to get cancer and they're not going to be able to get rid of it. It's like, well, that's a scare tactic. That's an MK Ultra type manipulation tactic, okay? They want you to believe that you have to play with yourself in order to survive. That's what's crazy. But if you look in the Bible, for example, Paul says, even abide like me if you're not married. Well, Paul was celibate. And I don't think any of these saints that are true saints played with themselves either. And I don't think, there's stories of even Immanuel Kant, who's a philosopher from a few centuries ago. He would actually have his, I don't know if it wasn't his maid. What do they call it? Like no. Anyway, I can't think of the term. Butler. That's what he had his butler or something help him tie himself to bed in a certain way so that he would not have the urge to play with himself during the night. And that's a story. I don't know if it's actually true, but that's a story that I heard in one of my philosophy classes in college. And I bring that up because we all have certain temptations. We all have certain things that we're going to be going through on this journey, and we're all going to be doing and dealing with certain kinds of sins and ways of moving about those temptations and how to move away from sin. But that doesn't mean that we are completely and utterly incapable of not moving beyond that. We are capable, and we are going to move beyond this. We have no choice. And in some ways, the choice is you either have no choice or you do. And you do have a choice, obviously. This is where life as a paradox comes into play, because I know that people might get a little confused here. Life is a paradox. There's a duality of this life, right? The physical exists, but also the spiritual realm and the spiritual domain exists. And what happens in the spiritual is going to influence the physical, but it's not always the case that what happens in the physical is going to influence the spiritual. The spiritual is always going to be more what comes first. If anybody's had nocturnal emissions or wet dreams, for example, those are going to be where you're moving spiritually closer to who you are. And then in the spirit domain, the dream world, where it's this timeless space of existence, this is going to be where demons might try to attack you, or a succubus might try to tempt you. All these different possibilities of what's to come and what's to happen. And then in your waking life, you might get reflections of that. And that's because the dream is the internal reflection and the mythological interpretation of what's happening in your external world. And it's sometimes personal consciousness, and it's sometimes not personal consciousness. It's more of a collective consciousness, but you'll be able to determine that down the line. But one of the biggest things that I see that men are going through, because we've had multiple men in the Regal Change Academy that have been hitting these major milestones, is they're starting to see themselves become the heroes of their own life to some degree. And it's not that they're placing themselves above God or anything like that, but it's that they're seeing themselves as more capable than they really thought they were. And they're realizing that there's more to them than they thought they were too. And that's kind of scary, because, well, that means that if there's more to you now and there was more to you then that means in the future, there's also going to be more to you. And God only knows your potential. And that's amazing, but that's also kind of frightening, because the motivation that is derived from reaching these milestones is great, but what's even greater is the discipline. And this goes back to what the hero, the symbolic version of the hero, and what that really means is becoming or acting out your own ideals. There's a quote in Beyond Good and Evil by Nietzsche, and he says something like, "What, a great man? I just see a man acting out his own ideals," something like that. And that's exactly what you're going to be more capable of doing on semen retention, because your discipline is way up. You're way more attuned to the nature of reality as it is. And that in of itself is going to be so powerful that you might not even understand the true power of it until down the line you're reflecting and seeing, oh, wow, okay. Because if you think about this, right? Let's say, for me, for example, this is going to be, I'm approaching 3 years in May. It'll be 3 years since I've done this practice and been practicing this practice. And I have not relapsed since then. I've had wet dreams and I've had nocturnal emissions, but I haven't had any kind of relapse since May of 2022. And part of the reason for that is because you all are helping me stay accountable. What's so fantastic about having influence is that when you have integrity to go along with that influence, you automatically discipline yourself to match your actions and the words of your actions. And there's something very profound about that happens that many people are not going to be able to fully comprehend or understand until they are able to implement this practice themselves and see the discipline. Because sometimes motivation is like this, right? Sometimes motivation is like there's these humps of motivation, and when you first get this like big motivation, oof, but this is why I don't believe in motivation. I believe in discipline and I believe in inspiration, because more discipline and inspiration is these consistent little umphs, little pushes that gradually get you closer. There's a verse in the Bible that says something along the lines of, he who gathers wealth little by little will gradually increase it, or will make it increase, or something like that, or keep the increase. And I think that goes to show with not just physical wealth, but also spiritual wealth, because a lot of people they'll learn something spiritual. They'll have this great revelation, and then they think that they've got it all figured out. And it's like, hold on a little there, buddy. What makes you think that you have it all figured out? Okay, because I've seen this happen multiple times, and I was talking to somebody in the Regal Change Academy about this as well, is how there will be people that they see one thing that makes sense to them, and it might not even be what they've are able to articulate, and yet they think that they have this newfound wisdom when what they really have is knowledge. And you've got to be careful with knowledge, because sometimes knowledge puffs you up, and knowledge will puff you up in a way that inflates your ego and inflates this ability for you to, okay, well, because I know this, I'm better. It's like, no. Because you've experienced it, you're better. And it's not because you are better. Like sometimes you just need to experience certain things in order to have that integrated wisdom. But it's not always going to be the case. And this is why Stoicism is such a practical, useful philosophy, is that you understand that 90% of what's going on in the world around you is entirely out of your control. Like, you cannot control nearly anything remotely close to what you think you can control. But this is why semen retention is so powerful, is you feel like in your little corner of the universe, when you have finally control over that little corner, now you can go out and now you can influence in a much more positive way that inspires courage, that inspires discipline, and that inspires people to take responsibility and accountability for their own lives by showing other people that you're not perfect, that you don't really have it all figured out, but you're doing your damnedest to do so. And when you do talk about things that you're talking about, you know what you're talking about, but you are also having enough humility to know that you don't know everything. And that's what's so beautiful about this practice. And that's why you're going to become your own hero and pretty much a local living legend on semen retention for yourself. And it's for you and your connection with God at the end of the day. So I hope this video was useful and insightful for you. If you do want to join the elite spiritual group that we have in the Regal Change Academy, feel free to check that out, linked in the description box below. We have a semen retention masterclass class available. We also are doing the Legends of Stoicism, as I mentioned right now. That's only going to be available for a limited time, but we have a bunch of other different classes that are going to be available for you to do on your own time, at your own pace, etc. We also have weekly Bible study calls, weekly Regal Assembly calls that we're actually going to have in a little bit later today, and then a weekly Maps of the Psyche call as well. And that is really the bread and butter of the Academy, is those group calls. That's where we get the most value in those for sure. Because, that's what people want, is people in that Academy, they're seeing the loneliness of the path, and so they want to be around like-minded people. And so the problem that we're really solving is we're hitting a few birds with one stone, so to speak, is the problem of loneliness, but also the problem of having these deep conversations with people that actually understand it. And then number 3 is actually being able to take actionable items and tasks from these calls to apply to your own life, and from the classes involved into your own life. So Also, we do have a free Telegram subscription that you can download and get on Telegram if you have Telegram. And that is going to be in the link in the description box below as well. I also appreciate everybody moving from the YouTube platform over to X, Rumble, and Instagram recently. I do appreciate all of y'all's extra support there. And with all that being said, peace be with you. Until next time.